Ethan's world shattered at 14. The night his father's fist met the dining room table, splintering the silence. "Get out. You're no son of mine," his father roared, voice thick with disgust, as Ethan's confession of being gay hung in the air like a guillotine. By dawn, he was on the streets of Willow Creek, Tennessee, a backpack slung over his shoulder, heart pounding with fear and freedom. The small town, with its white picket fences and church steeples piercing the sky, had no place for a boy like Ethan. He was too young to understand why his truth felt like a crime, too young to fight the ache of his mother's tearful silence as she watched him leave. The gravel crunched under his sneakers as he walked past the town's only diner, its neon sign flickering open like a cruel promise of warmth he couldn't afford. Ethan had $12, a half-eaten granola bar, and a heart full of questions no one would answer. He found refuge in the shadows of Willow Creek's edges, where the train tracks cut through fields of overgrown grass. The first night, he curled up in an abandoned shed, the wind whistling through cracked boards, his breath visible in the October chill. Fear clawed at him, fear of hunger, of being found, of being nothing. But there was something else, too, a spark of defiance, a whisper that he wasn't wrong for existing. That spark kept him alive. By morning, Ethan met Caleb, a lanky boy with kind brown eyes and a crooked smile, scavenging for scrap metal near the tracks. Caleb was 16, a runaway too, though his story was different. Foster homes, not family, had spit him out. "You look like you need a friend," Caleb said, tossing Ethan an apple from his worn satchel. It was the first act of kindness Ethan had felt in days, and it tethered him to something human. They became inseparable, two boys against the world, sharing stolen moments of laughter under starlit skies and whispered dreams of a life where they could be themselves. Caleb taught Ethan how to survive, where to find food behind the diner, how to blend into the town's margins. They'd sneak into the library after hours, reading books about far-off cities where people like them weren't outcasts. Ethan dreamed of New York, its skyscrapers a symbol of possibility. Caleb spoke of San Francisco, where the ocean met the sky in a promise of freedom. But survival wasn't easy. Willow Creek's winters were brutal, and the boys faced nights so cold their fingers numbed around scavenged blankets. They learned to dodge the town's watchful eyes. Pastor Reynolds, who preached fire and brimstone, and Sheriff Holt, whose patrol car circled like a vulture. Ethan's anger grew with every passing day, a slow burn against the family that rejected him, the town that turned its back. Caleb, though, was his anchor, his laughter a lifeline when the weight of it all threatened to crush Ethan's spirit. One night, huddled in a barn, Ethan confessed his deepest fear. "What if I'm not worth loving?" His voice cracked, raw with vulnerability. Caleb took his hand, their fingers intertwining in the dark. "You're worth more than this town will ever know," he said, his voice steady, eyes fierce with conviction. It was the moment Ethan realized he wasn't alone, that love could exist even in the ruins of rejection. Their bond deepened, a quiet romance blooming amid the chaos. Stolen glances turned to tentative touches, then to a kiss under a willow tree, its branches swaying like a shield against the world. But love, even theirs, couldn't erase the hunger or the cold. By spring, they faced a choice: stay in Willow Creek, invisible and scraping by, or leave for something better. Ethan wanted to run, to chase the horizon. Caleb hesitated, haunted by stories of runaways who never made it. The decision came abruptly. One evening, Sheriff Holt caught them scavenging near the diner. "You boys don't belong here," he growled, his flashlight blinding. Ethan's heart raced, but Caleb stood tall, defiance in his stance. "We're leaving," Caleb said, voice firm. That night, they pooled their meager savings $47 and boarded a bus to Nashville, the city's lights a distant promise of hope. In Nashville, Life was different, but no less hard. They found a shelter that didn't ask questions, a place where other lost souls gathered. Ethan got a job washing dishes at a diner, his hands raw from hot water and soap. Caleb worked odd jobs, his charm winning over strangers who tipped generously. They shared a single mattress in a cramped dorm, whispering plans for the future under the hum of fluorescent lights. Ethan began to see himself not as a victim, but as a survivor, his heart mending with every day he and Caleb built together. But Willow Creek lingered in Ethan's mind, a wound that wouldn't heal. He thought of his mother's face, her silence cutting deeper than his father's words. He wondered if she ever regretted letting him go. Caleb, sensing his unrest, urged him to let it go. "You don't owe them anything," he said one night, his hand on Ethan's shoulder. But Ethan wasn't so sure. Something in him burned not just anger, but a need to prove he was more than the boy they'd thrown away. Nashville was a crucible, forging Ethan and Caleb into sharper versions of themselves. The city's pulsed its honky-tonk bars, bustling streets, and neon glow felt like a world away from Willow Creek's suffocating quiet. Yet, the struggle was relentless. Ethan's dishwashing job paid $9 an hour, barely enough for food after the shelter took its cut. Caleb's odd jobs delivering flyers, cleaning gutters kept them afloat. But their dreams of New York or San Francisco felt like stars too distant to reach. Ethan turned 15 in a crowded shelter cafeteria, a single candle flickering on a stale cupcake Caleb had swiped from a bakery's discard bin. "Make a wish," Caleb whispered, his smile soft but strained. Ethan closed his eyes, wishing for a day when they wouldn't have to fight to exist. The candle's wax dripped onto the table, a reminder of time slipping away. They found solace in Nashville's underground scene, a network of queer youth who gathered in abandoned warehouses to share stories, music, and hope. There, Ethan met Jazz, a trans woman in her 20s with a laugh that cut through the gloom. She ran a makeshift art studio, teaching kids like Ethan to channel pain into paint. Ethan's first piece, a chaotic swirl of blues and reds, depicting a boy breaking free from chains, earned Jazz's nod of approval. "You've got fire, kid," she said. "Don't let it burn you out." Caleb, meanwhile, discovered a knack for storytelling. He'd spin tales of adventure to the younger kids, his voice weaving worlds where they were heroes, not outcasts. Ethan watched him, heart swelling with pride and something deeper love that felt like home. But love couldn't pay the bills, and the shelter's rules grew stricter. They needed a real plan. One night, Jazz introduced them to a community center offering job training for at-risk youth. Ethan enrolled in a barista course, his hands learning the rhythm of steaming milk and pulling espresso. Caleb signed up for a writing workshop, his stories catching the eye of a volunteer mentor, Ms. Harper, who saw potential in his words. "You could be a journalist," she told him, handing him a worn copy of On the Road. Caleb's eyes lit up, and for the first time, Ethan saw him believe in a future. But the past wasn't done with Ethan. Nightmares of Willow Creek haunted him, his father's voice, his mother's silence, the town's judgment. He'd wake up gasping, Caleb's arms pulling him close. "You're here now?" Caleb would murmur. But Ethan felt the tug of unfinished business. He started writing letters to his mother, never sending them, pouring out his hurt and hope on crumpled notebook pages. By 16, Ethan landed a job at a coffee shop, his charm earning tips that added up. Caleb got a gig writing for a local zine, his articles about queer youth sparking conversations in the community. They moved into a tiny studio apartment, its peeling paint and leaky faucet a palace compared to the shelter. They decorated with thrift store finds, a mismatched couch and a string of Christmas lights that glowed like their dreams. Yet, tension crept in. Ethan's need to confront his past clashed with Caleb's urge to move forward. "Why go back?" Caleb asked one night, frustration lacing his voice. They don't deserve you. Ethan stared at the floor, unable to explain the ache in his chest. He didn't want to return to Willow Creek to beg for acceptance, wanted to show them he'd survived, that he'd become someone despite their rejection. Their first real fight came after Ethan spent their savings on a bus ticket to nowhere, just to feel the road beneath him. Caleb was furious, his trust shaken. "We're supposed to be a team," he said, voice breaking. Ethan apologized, but the rift lingered. They made up under the Christmas lights, their kisses desperate, but Ethan felt the weight of his unresolved anger pulling him away. A turning point came when Jazz invited them to a pride event in Nashville. Ethan stood in the crowd, watching people of every color and identity dance under rainbow flags. And something shifted. He wasn't just surviving, was part of something bigger. He grabbed Caleb's hand, pulling him into the chaos, their laughter drowning out the world. For one night, they were free. But freedom was fleeting. A letter arrived from Willow Creek, forwarded by the shelter. It was from Ethan's mother, her handwriting shaky. "I miss you. I'm sorry." The words hit like a punch, unraveling years of buried pain. Ethan didn't tell Caleb. Not yet. He tucked the letter under their mattress, its weight heavier than the city around them. The letter burned a hole in Ethan's mind. His mother's words, "I miss you. I'm sorry," looped endlessly, stirring a storm of hope and rage. He was 17 now, taller, with a sharper jawline and eyes that carried the weight of 3 years on the road. Nashville had toughened him, but that letter cracked something open, exposing the boy who still longed for home. Caleb noticed the change. Ethan grew quiet. His usual spark dimmed. They'd built a fragile life in their studio apartment, scraping by but dreaming big. Caleb's zine articles were gaining traction, and Ethan's coffee shop shifts had earned him a promotion to shift leader. But the letter shifted Ethan's focus, pulling him back to Willow Creek in ways Caleb couldn't understand. "You're not thinking of going back, are you?" Caleb asked one evening, chopping vegetables for their makeshift dinner. His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Ethan hesitated, stirring the pot of rice, the steam rising between them. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just need to know why she wrote." Caleb's knife paused, his jaw tight. "She let you go? Ethan, what's there to find?" The question lingered, unanswered. Ethan carried the letter everywhere, rereading it until the paper frayed. He imagined confronting his mother, demanding answers, but also pictured her arms around him, the apology he'd craved at 14. The conflict tore at him, straining his bond with Caleb, who threw himself into his writing to avoid the growing distance. Jazz sensed the tension too. At the art studio, she pulled Ethan aside. "You're carrying something heavy," she said, her voice low but firm. "If you're going to face your past, do it for you, not them." She handed him a canvas and a brush. "Paint it out first." Ethan's next piece was raw, dark silhouette of a boy against a burning house, flames licking the sky. It was Willow Creek, his pain, his survival. Meanwhile, Caleb's writing caught the eye of a local newspaper editor. They offered him a freelance gig, a chance to cover stories about marginalized communities. He came home buzzing, words spilling out about interviews and deadlines. Ethan smiled, proud but distant, the letter still a secret between them. That night, they lay in bed, the Christmas lights casting shadows. "I'm scared you'll leave," Caleb whispered, his vulnerability cutting through Ethan's walls. "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan lied, hating himself for it. The lie unraveled when Caleb found the letter under the mattress. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, hurt flashing in his eyes. Ethan tried to explain the confusion, the need for closure, but Caleb shook his head. "We're supposed to share everything." The fight escalated, words sharp as knives. Caleb stormed out, leaving Ethan alone with the letter and his guilt. Days passed in tense silence. Ethan threw himself into work. The coffee shop's rhythm a distraction from the ache. Caleb stayed late at the newspaper, his absence loud in their tiny apartment. Ethan painted more, each canvas darker, angrier. Jazz urged him to talk to Caleb, but pride and fear kept him silent. He wondered if love could survive secrets, if he was breaking the one thing that had kept him whole. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. The community center hosted a storytelling night, and Caleb was slated to read. Ethan went, slipping into the back of the crowded room. Caleb's piece was about them two boys running from a town that didn't want them, finding home in each other. His voice trembled as he described Ethan's courage, his defiance, his heart. The crowd applauded, but Ethan's eyes were on Caleb, tears blurring his vision. After, they met outside, the night air cool. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, voice breaking. Caleb pulled him close. "Just don't shut me out." They decided together, Ethan would go to Willow Creek, but not alone. Caleb would come, not to confront Ethan's family, but to stand by him. They planned the trip carefully, pooling their savings for bus tickets and a cheap motel. Ethan wrote a reply to his mother. Simple but direct. "I'm coming home. We need to talk." He mailed it, his heart pounding, unsure if she'd respond. The night before they left, they sat on their couch, the Christmas lights glowing. Ethan traced Caleb's palm, memorizing its lines. "What if they still hate me?" he asked, voice small. Caleb kissed his forehead. "Then we'll show them who you've become." For the first time, Ethan felt ready not to beg for acceptance, but to claim his place in a world that had tried to erase him. The bus to Willow Creek smelled of diesel and stale coffee, rattling along Tennessee's backroads as Ethan stared out the window. At 18, he was no longer the scrawny kid who'd left. His shoulders were broader, his gaze steadier, but his heart raced with every mile. Caleb sat beside him, sketching in a notebook, his presence a quiet anchor against the storm in Ethan's chest. Willow Creek hadn't changed. The same church steeple loomed over Main Street. The same diner flickered its neon sign. Ethan's stomach twisted as they stepped off the bus, the air thick with memories of rejection. Their motel room was cramped, with faded wallpaper and a lumpy bed, but Caleb made it feel safe, cracking jokes about the tacky decor until Ethan laughed despite himself. They spent the first day walking the town's edges, avoiding familiar faces. Ethan pointed out the shed where he'd spent his first night, the willow tree where they'd shared their first kiss. Caleb listened, his hand brushing Ethan's, grounding him. "You're not that kid anymore," Caleb said, his voice firm. Ethan nodded, but the weight of his mother's letter pressed against him, urging him toward the house he'd once called home. He knocked on the door the next morning, Caleb waiting across the street. Ethan's mother, Ellen, answered, her face older, lined with grief. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, Ethan saw the woman who'd tucked him in as a child. "Ethan," she whispered, voice breaking. She stepped aside, letting him in. The house smelled of lemon cleaner, unchanged except for new photos on the mantel, none of Ethan. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where his father had disowned him. Ellen's hands trembled as she spoke. "Your father, he's gone. Left 2 years ago." Ethan's chest tightened, relief and loss tangled together. Ellen admitted she'd been wrong, her silence a betrayal born of fear and shame. "I didn't know how to fight for you," she said, tears falling. Ethan wanted to hate her, but her pain mirrored his own. He told her about Nashville, about Caleb, about the life he'd built. Ellen listened, her eyes searching his face as if meeting him for the first time. "I want to know you," she said softly. Ethan didn't forgive her not yet, but he left the house feeling lighter. The door to reconciliation cracked open. Back at the motel, Caleb held him as he cried, the weight of 4 years spilling out. "You did it," Caleb whispered. But Willow Creek wasn't done with Ethan. Word of his return spread, and old wounds reopened. At the diner, Pastor Reynolds spotted him, his face twisting with disdain. "You shouldn't be here," he said, loud enough for heads to turn. Ethan stood tall, his voice steady. "I belong anywhere I choose." The confrontation sparked whispers. Some townsfolk stared with curiosity, others with scorn. Caleb urged Ethan to ignore them, but Ethan felt a fire growing. He wasn't here to hide. At the community center, he and Caleb found a flyer for a youth open mic night. Ethan signed up, his heart pounding. He'd never spoken publicly, but Jazz's words echoed, "Do it for you." The night of the event, the community center was packed. Ethan took the stage, his hands shaking as he gripped the microphone. He told his story, kicked out at 14, surviving on the streets, finding love and purpose in Nashville. His voice broke as he spoke of Caleb, of the family they'd built from nothing. The room was silent, then erupted in applause, led by a group of teens in the back, their faces alight with recognition. After, a girl approached, no older than 15, her eyes nervous. "I'm like you," she whispered. "My parents don't know." Ethan hugged her, his heart full. He realized then that his return wasn't just about closure, it was about showing others they could survive, too. Caleb squeezed his hand, pride in his eyes. "You're changing things," he said. But not everyone was moved. The next day, Sheriff Holt stopped them outside the motel, his tone cold. "Folks don't like trouble," he warned. Ethan's defiance flared. "I'm not trouble. I'm home." The words felt true, even if Willow Creek didn't agree. Willow Creek's air grew heavier as Ethan's presence stirred the town. His open mic speech rippled through the community. A stone dropped in still water. Teens whispered his name in school hallways, while older residents muttered about disrupting the peace. Ethan felt the tension, but he refused to shrink. He'd come back to face his past, not to hide from it. Caleb, ever his rock, kept him grounded. They spent mornings exploring the town, reclaiming spaces that once held pain. The willow tree by the creek became their sanctuary again, its branches a quiet witness to their love. Ethan sketched there, his pencil tracing the lines of Caleb's face, capturing the strength in his eyes. "You're my home," Ethan told him, the words a vow. But the town's resistance grew. Pastor Reynolds organized a church meeting, calling Ethan's return a challenge to values. Flyers appeared, urging residents to protect Willow Creek. Ethan found one taped to the motel door, its words like a slap, "No place for sinners." Caleb tore it down, his jaw tight. "They're scared of you," he said. "You're proof they're wrong." Ethan's mother reached out again, inviting him to dinner. He hesitated, memories of that last night in her house still raw. Caleb encouraged him. "She's trying," he said. "That's more than you had before." Ethan agreed, and they went together, Caleb's hand a steady warmth in his. Ellen had cooked roast chicken, Ethan's childhood favorite. The meal was awkward, silences heavy, but she asked about their lives, genuinely listening. When Caleb spoke about his writing, her smile was tentative but real. After dinner, Ellen gave Ethan a box of his old Things comic books, a worn baseball glove, a photo of him at 10, grinning gap-toothed. "I kept them," she said, voice thick. Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't know if he could forgive, but he saw her effort, fragile and new. As they left, she hugged him, her arms trembling. "Come back soon," she whispered. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. The town's hostility escalated. One night, someone threw a brick through the motel window, a note tied to it, "Leave." Caleb called the sheriff, but Holt's response was curt, Kids play pranks. Ethan's anger flared, but Caleb's steady gaze kept him from lashing out. We're stronger than this, Caleb said, taping cardboard over the shattered glass. Ethan nodded, but the incident lit a fire in him. He wasn't leaving until he'd made his mark. He reached out to the community center, proposing a workshop for queer youth. The director, Ms. Carter, was hesitant but agreed after seeing the open mix impact. Ethan and Caleb spent days planning, drawing on their Nashville experiences. They posted flyers, ignoring the ones torn down. The workshop drew a small group 5 teens, nervous but curious. Ethan shared his story, Caleb adding humor to ease the tension. One boy, Liam, admitted he was scared to come out. Ethan knelt beside him. You're enough, just as you are, he said, echoing Caleb's words from years ago. The workshop became a weekly event, a safe space in a hostile town. Word spread, and more kids came, some with parents who wanted to understand. Ethan saw his mother in the back one evening, listening quietly. After, she approached. I'm proud of you, she said, her voice steady for the first time. Ethan's eyes stung, but he held her gaze. I needed to hear that, he replied. The church pushed back harder. Pastor Reynolds held a rally, preaching about saving the town. Ethan and Caleb attended, standing at the back, hands clasped. When Reynolds called for traditional values, Ethan stepped forward. I'm not your enemy, he said, voice carrying. I'm someone's son, someone's friend, someone's love. I'm not going anywhere. The crowd was silent, some faces softening, others hardening. That night, Ethan painted a vibrant mural on a community center wall, approved by Ms. Carter. It showed 2 boys under a willow tree, their hands linked, surrounded by colors of hope. Caleb helped, his laughter easing Ethan's nerves. This is us, Caleb said, brushing paint on Ethan's cheek. The mural became a symbol, a beacon for those who felt unseen. The mural changed Willow Creek's pulse. Kids snapped photos, whispering about the gay boys' art with awe, while others defaced it with slurs, only for volunteers to scrub it clean by morning. Ethan and Caleb became symbols heroes to some, threats to others. The workshop grew, drawing teens from nearby towns, their stories echoing Ethan's own. He felt a purpose he'd never known, but the weight of the town's division pressed harder. Caleb's writing flourished, his articles about the workshop catching attention beyond Willow Creek. A Nashville paper picked up his story, headlining it Small Town, Big Change. Ethan read it, pride swelling, but worry gnawed at him. Caleb was thriving, his dreams taking shape, while Ethan felt tethered to Willow Creek, his mission unfinished. Late at night, he'd traced the scars of his past, wondering if he was holding Caleb back. Ellen became a quiet ally, attending workshops and bringing coffee for the kids. Her presence was a bridge, fragile but growing stronger. She shared stories of Ethan's childhood, her voice warm with regret and hope. One evening, she handed him a letter from his father, found in his old desk. He wrote it before he left, she said. Ethan opened it, heart pounding. The words were cold, unyielding, "You're no son of mine." But at the bottom, in shaky ink, "I don't understand you, but I hope you're okay." It wasn't love, but it was something, and Ethan tucked it away, unsure what to feel. The town's resistance peaked when Pastor Reynolds organized a protest outside the community center. A crowd gathered, signs reading, "Protect our values," and "God hates sin." Ethan and Caleb stood with the workshop kids, facing the chants. Liam, the shy boy from the first session, held a rainbow flag, his hands shaking but eyes fierce. Ethan's heart swelled. Wasn't alone anymore. Ms. Carter stepped in, her voice calm but firm. This center is for everyone, she told the crowd. Some protesters left. Others stayed, their anger simmering. That night, Ethan and Caleb painted over new graffiti on the mural, their brushes steady. "We're winning," Caleb said, his smile tired but real. Ethan nodded, but he felt the cost. Every step forward came with a fight. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. A local reporter, inspired by Caleb's article, interviewed Ethan for a feature. He spoke rawly about being kicked out, surviving, and coming back to show Willow Creek he wasn't broken. The story ran statewide, and letters poured in, some hateful, but many from queer youth, thanking him for his courage. Ethan read them with Caleb, tears falling. "You're doing this," Caleb said, kissing his temple. "You're changing lives." But the attention brought danger. One night, as they left the community center, a group of men cornered them in an alley. "You're tearing this town apart," one growled, fists clenched. Ethan stepped in front of Caleb, heart racing. "We're not the ones breaking things," he said, voice steady. Caleb pulled him back, and they ran, the men's shouts fading behind them. At the motel, Caleb's hands shook as he checked Ethan for injuries. "We can't stay forever," he said, fear in his eyes. Ethan agreed, but he wasn't ready to leave. He proposed a final act of pride event in Willow Creek. Small but bold. Ms. Carter backed it, and the workshop kids rallied, making posters and planning performances. Ellen offered to bake cookies, her shy smile a quiet revolution. Caleb wrote a speech, his words weaving hope and defiance. Ethan painted a banner, "Love is home." The event was set for the community center's lawn, a week away. They worked tirelessly, ignoring threats scrawled on their motel door. Ethan felt alive, his purpose clear. He wasn't just fighting for himself, was fighting for Liam, for the girl at the open mic, for every kid who felt unwanted. Caleb watched him, pride and worry warring in his eyes. "You're unstoppable," he said, pulling Ethan close. As the event neared, Ethan felt the town's pulse shift. Some residents donated food, others whispered support. But Pastor Reynolds planned a counter-protest, and Sheriff Holt warned of trouble. Ethan stood taller, ready to face whatever came. He wasn't the boy who'd left at 14, was someone new, forged by love and resilience. The morning of the Pride event dawned crisp, the sky a clear blue over Willow Creek. Ethan woke early, nerves buzzing, the motel room cluttered with posters and paint cans. Caleb was already up, rehearsing his speech, his voice steady but eyes betraying worry. "We're doing this," Ethan said, squeezing his hand. Caleb nodded, a small smile breaking through. "For us. For them." The community center's lawn buzzed with activity. Workshop kids hung the "Love is Home" banner, its colors vivid against the grass. Liam and the others set up tables with Ellen's cookies and donated lemonade. A small stage stood ready for performances, poetry, songs, stories from kids who'd found their voice. Ethan's mural loomed in the background, a testament to their fight. But across the street, Pastor Reynolds' counter-protest gathered, signs raised, voices loud. By noon, a crowd formed, supporters mixed with skeptics, curious townsfolk drawn by the buzz. Ethan spotted familiar faces, the diner waitress who'd slipped him food years ago, Ms. Carter's husband, even Sheriff Holt, watching from a distance. The air crackled with tension, but Ethan felt alive, his purpose sharp. He took the stage first, heart pounding. "This is for everyone who's been told they don't belong," he said, voice carrying. "We're here. We're enough." The kids performed, their courage stunning the crowd. Liam read a poem about hiding his truth, his voice shaking but unbroken. A girl sang a ballad, her girlfriend cheering from the front. Caleb's speech came last, his words weaving their journey to boys who found love in a world that tried to break them. Home isn't a place, he said, looking at Ethan. It's the people who see you. The crowd cheered, some tearfully, others hesitant but moved. Pastor Reynolds' group shouted from across the street, but their voices faltered as more townsfolk joined Ethan's side. Ellen stood with the kids, her presence a quiet rebuke to the church's hate. When a protester threw a bottle, Sheriff Holt stepped in, his face stern. "Enough," he said, dispersing the group. Ethan caught his eye, surprised by the nod Holt gave him. After the event, people lingered, sharing stories. A man approached Ethan, his face weathered. "I kicked my son out years ago," he said, voice low. "Seeing you, I'm trying to make it right." Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't know if the man would follow through, but the words were a crack in Willow Creek's armor. That night, Ethan and Caleb sat by the creek, the willow tree's branches swaying. "We did it," Ethan said, his voice soft. Caleb kissed him, slow and sure. "You did it," he corrected. But Ethan shook his head. "We." They talked about the future returning to Nashville, maybe chasing New York or San Francisco. But Ethan felt a shift. Willow Creek wasn't home, but it wasn't his enemy anymore. The next day, Ellen asked them to stay for breakfast. She'd invited MS, Carter and Liam's parents, who were grappling with their sons coming out. The table was crowded, the conversation awkward but earnest. Ethan saw his mother's effort, her questions about Caleb's writing, her shy smile at Liam. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As they prepared to leave Willow Creek, Ethan painted one last a small canvas for Ellen, showing a boy and his mother under a willow tree, hands reaching but not yet touching. "Keep it," he told her. She hugged him, tears falling. "I'll see you again," she said. Ethan nodded, believing her. Back at the motel, Caleb packed their bags, his movements light. "You changed this town," he said. Ethan shrugged, but his heart was full. He'd come back to face his past, but he'd done shown Willow Creek that love could outlast hate. The bus to Nashville waited, and as they boarded, Ethan felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the promise of a future they'd build together. Back in Nashville, Ethan and Caleb slipped into their old rhythm, but they weren't the same. The studio apartment, with its peeling paint and Christmas lights, felt smaller, charged with the weight of what they'd accomplished. Ethan returned to the coffee shop, his shifts now laced with confidence, customers drawn to his easy smile. Caleb's freelance work grew, his articles sparking invites to speak at community events. They were no longer just survivors, they were builders of something bigger. Willow Creek's impact lingered. Ethan got emails from kids who'd attended the Pride event, their words raw with gratitude. Liam wrote about coming out to his parents, who were trying to understand. The girl from the Open, Mike, sent a photo of her with her girlfriend, smiling at a school dance. Ethan pinned these to their wall, a mosaic of hope. He painted again, his canvases brighter, filled with figures reaching for light. Ellen called weekly, her voice steadier each time. She sent care packages, cookies, a scarf she'd knitted, a photo of Ethan's mural. Their talks were cautious but growing, a bridge being built word by word. Ethan didn't fully forgive, but he let her in, piece by piece. Caleb watched, proud but protective, always checking if Ethan was okay. "You're my anchor," Ethan told him one night, their hands linked under the lights. They planned their next move. New York called, its promise of art and freedom tugging at Ethan. Caleb dreamed of San Francisco, its hills and history a writer's muse. They saved every penny, their jar of tips and spare change a symbol of their shared future. Jazz threw them a going-away party at the art studio, the room packed with friends who'd become family. "You two are unstoppable," she said, raising a glass. Ethan grinned, his arm around Caleb, feeling the truth of it. Before leaving, Ethan wrote a letter to Willow Creek, published in the local paper. It was simple, direct. I came back to show you I survived. You showed me I could do more. He thanked him S. Carter, the kids, even Sheriff Holt, whose nod had meant something. The letter spread online, shared by strangers who saw themselves in Ethan's story. Caleb framed a copy, hanging it beside Ethan's paintings. Their last night in Nashville was quiet, just them and the Christmas lights. Ethan traced Caleb's face, memorizing every line. I was scared I'd lose you, he admitted. Caleb kissed him, soft and sure. You're stuck with me. They laughed, the sound of promise. The next morning, they boarded a bus to New York, their savings enough for a tiny room in Brooklyn. The city's skyline greeted them, a canvas of possibility. In New York, Ethan found work at an art gallery, his paintings catching the eye of a curator. Caleb landed a job at a small magazine, his stories gaining a wider audience. They built a life messy, imperfect, theirs. Willow Creek faded, not forgotten, but no longer awound. Ethan sent Ellen a photo of their new apartment, a note scrawled on the back, "We're home." Years later, they returned to Willow Creek for a workshop reunion. The town had changed, new faces, fewer protests, a rainbow flag in the community center window. Liam, now in college, hugged them, his confidence a mirror of Ethan's journey. Ellen was there, older but brighter, her arms open. Pastor Reynolds had retired, his church quieter. The mural still stood, faded but proud. Ethan stood under the willow tree, Caleb beside him. We did good, Caleb said, his hand warm in Ethan's. Ethan nodded, his heart full. He'd been kicked out at 14, a boy with nothing but defiance. He'd returned, not to win, but to show that love, his, Caleb's, the kids could reshape a world that tried to break them. And in that moment, under the swaying branches, he knew he'd found his place, not in Willow Creek, but in the life he'd built, the love he'd fought for, the home he carried within.